Hello, Inform Scotland followers and friends. I'm here with the vlog accompanying the blog on informscotland.uk. I've just put it up. It's the blog called Data Update for 9th of November 2021. So that's yesterday. I updated the blog with yesterday's data. Now, basically, the situation is pretty much stable at the moment, but there are a few things that I would like to say. You can see in the first graph that I've shown that we are very stable, but definitely in a sixth wave of coronavirus now. The case numbers are pretty stable, but rising slightly perhaps. We've never really fully come down from that peak that we have just been through in September, that huge peak. It's not just that we're doing more testing, because if you go and look at graph 2, you can see that we are seeing a distinct new wave of positivity. Now, there's a couple of things to note about that. One is it's a distinct new wave. It doesn't look quite the same as the last three, which have been very pronounced upwards trends very fast. It's very hard to say what it's going to look like, but the point is that we're pretty much at the level that we saw in the January wave. That was post-vaccination rollout. And so the level of positivity that we are seeing now as a baseline is very similar to what we saw in January after the vaccination. Now, obviously, after January, we went down, and by the beginning of May, we were at this very low positivity rate, which, you know, you're never going to get lower than that because of false positives. But I think this seems like a distant dream now. I don't know if we're ever going to get back to it, frankly, because clearly we now have a situation where lots of people in our population are testing positive. The tests are picking up something. Who knows what's going on there? But as I said, and it's a matter of public record because it's on Facebook posts that I did for Us With Scotland, when you do a lot of testing, this is what's going to happen. And we are doing a lot of testing, or we certainly have been. Newly tested individuals have fallen in number recently. That's graph 3, back down to levels that we saw last autumn. So that's good news. This wee bump here was quite extreme. That was in late August, early September. So I think it was schools. Kids were spreading things around, getting tested. I think a lot of them were getting tested with clinically irrelevant symptoms for COVID. But if you get lots of people showing up for tests, what that means is you've got lots of infection around, or whether it's COVID or SARS-CoV-2 infections or something else, who knows, but it means that people are developing symptoms, which is making them present for tests. So that's obviously calmed down now. But then on the other hand, we're seeing this elevated level of positivity, which implies that we do have a lot of SARS-CoV-2 around. So it's a bit of a mixed picture. People are generally much more likely to test positive than they were last year. This means there is either much more virus present or something that brings back a positive result is present or that those having repeated tests, like healthcare workers or people who are happy to submit to testing repeatedly, are testing positive more often. That's the only logical explanation. Right. Graph 4, you can see there's a few things going on here. One is this green line, which is delayed discharges, is at a 50% higher level than it was this time last year. This is not good news as we go into winter. We're now sitting at a sort of stable level of 1,500 delayed discharges. Those are people who have no clinical reason to be in hospital, but remain there anyway. If we should have any problem with staffing in care homes, for example, then that would make that problem worse. Hospital occupancy, that's the blue line, is dropping really quick. Well, it just dropped really quickly over the last couple of days, but overall it's in a kind of slow descent. And for the first time ever, deaths are not falling at the same rate. So normally hospitalizations and deaths of the yellow line, follow one another quite closely, but in this case I would say deaths are remaining level or stable, while hospital occupancy is falling. Graph 5, you can see where hospital occupancies are falling, and the blue line, the top blue line, which is Glasgow, is falling the fastest. We've seen this before. Glasgow hospital occupancy seems to collapse very suddenly at times. And the other area that's seeing a marked reduction is Fife. ITU occupancy is much the same, like it's fallen very fast in Glasgow, which is bringing the general numbers down, but there is a bit going on in other regions as well. Graph 6 and graph 7 is this kind of complicated graph. It's on 2 axes as well, but what you can see is that the black line, which is positive tests, it has predicted the rise in ITU occupancy, which is the red line, really well in the autumn and winter waves. Well, and this is the January, this is from 2021. But what has happened latterly is that we're losing all relationship, really. I mean, I know that positive tests have increased before ITU occupancy has, but the relationship's gone a bit fuzzy, and we've got kind of funny things happening in ITU. I don't really know what's going on there, but generally the level of ITU occupancy is pretty flat, stubbornly so. Hospital occupancy for the 2 years, we've looked at this before, you can see hospital occupancy is coming down. What I think is really interesting about 2020 and 2021 is that they're looking really, really similar. Like this wave and the 2020 wave at the end of the year look really alike, and so does the January wave and last year's April wave. However, we've had more hospital occupancy days with COVID in 2021 than in 2020, which isn't great. Deaths are similar. You can see there 2020 is blue and 2021 is red. This graph is very interesting, and I've put a wee blurb about it in the blog. These are positive results percentages by day of the week. And what you're seeing laterally is this big old mess here of dots. Last week, we saw that on Tuesday, there was a positivity level twice the level of Thursday, which seems quite bizarre. And generally, there's been a lot more messy results. So what we're seeing here is we're not getting the same reproducibility that we were getting previously. And I think that's an indication that there's a problem in the labs, and it probably means that we can't trust that we are seeing a true epidemic. I'm going to finish this video here, and we'll call this part 1 because I've got a memory problem on my phone and I can't be bothered sorting it. See you in a minute.